Let's talk about composition. Let's give a quick overview as to what composition is and a bit of its most used rules or guidelines and how we can use it for our advantage in our class and in the piece that we're about to do. So the first and probably the most, I guess, famous or the most used rule about composition is the rule of thirds. Okay, before I go on, quick disclaimer about rules of composition and guidelines and pretty much what I'm about to say. Everything that it's even if I call them rules, and even if they are so-called rules in maybe books or theory of art and whatnot, my view, and it's not only my view, but I would say that more than rules, I would take them only as useful guidelines at a certain point. If you're not sure where to take the composition of your image, or at least as a baseline where you can always fall to. I would never take them as an actual rule book that it only can, like an image can only be with any of these 4 or 5 rules. There's no other possibility. And because that would totally destroy the possibility of any exploration. And I truly believe that composition, it's about exploring what's the best arrangement of your elements. In the end, if we have to design composition in terms of illustration and image making in some sense, it is the arrangement of elements within the picture, within the edges of the image, right? So, and that arrangement could be an infinite ways of possibilities. So, why limited to a few uh, possibilities, right? So, with that said, even if I'm about to say a few things, may refer them as rules or guidelines. Take them all with a grain of salt. If you didn't know about them, now you do. And if you want to explore more about them, by all means, go ahead and search for more info on these types of composition arrangements. But again, I truly think that the best workflow, let's say, for composition, it's to explore it every time with each image, never just go and pre-decide that the rule of thirds is going to be the best solution for this, even though I haven't started. I would say never do that. You will remove great possibilities from the equation that you will never even dare to explore just because you decided already that this thing have to be in the third, otherwise it won't work. Okay, so very much keep an open mind when it comes to composition and sketch away and explore what's the best for the specific story or whatever it is that needs to happen in that image. Okay, so back to the rule of thirds. So it is one of the most kind of famous and more easy to use guidelines. Okay, so the point about the rule of thirds, uh, basically what it's meant to do is that if you were to subdivide your image into thirds in every direction, you would get 9 equal parts, a 9 equal part division, right? So the points of crossing between the 9 sectors, so pretty much the 4 corners of the middle section, are the spots where the eye will have an easier time looking, let's say. It is the most comfortable places to look and place stuff that needs to get attention. Aside from also the middle, which is always a nice point to put something, right? So the middle would be the most obvious place to put something if you wanted to call for attention. In this case, the tree is doing that in a big way. But the next spot, and then there is so in the middle, yes, it will be an effective one, but also the fact that it is centered, that makes it a bit boring in some sense because there's equal division, separation towards the edges, and that can work for certain images, but it's by its nature it won't be dynamic. So there's more that you could explore. So the next step could be placing it around the thirds. This is obviously not mathematical. It doesn't need to be exactly there. It just means that around its spot, it is a sweet spot of not being too close to the edge of any edge and not be exactly at the center where it is kind of boring. So it's dynamic enough and also not so off center to be unbalanced in the whole image. And then from there, you could balance by having, let's say, something interesting here and something interesting in the opposite one to balance, or the other two, or something on each, but at different extremes of attention, right? So, for example, if we analyze this specific painting, let's say that we have something of strong interest here with the sun glowing the clouds. That would become, let's say, one element. Then on the bottom right, we don't have that much, but we could say that the cows are part of this third, even though they are not necessarily exactly at the spot. But we could say that the cows are balancing with this in the opposite corner, and this is there's a certain balance here. Then on this one, we get the river reflection as another point of balance to the. There's quite a contrast here because of the reflection, and there's a bit of interest in shapes and information. So you get something in the other third, which might not have to be as important as these two, but it balances out. And same here. It's not as strong as this, but you still get some info of this dark cloud against the lighter sky, plus the spot of light on the other cloud to create a bit of interest here to compensate with the river and balance with the other two corners. Other than that, there's a few other things at work, as we already mentioned. So there's a tree center in the middle, so there's already arguably a main focal point there. Other than that, there's these other trees on the side that are more used for framing. So there's a sense of, even if they are not going all the way to the edges, these trees, the fact that they're quite dark and cover almost the entire vertical aspect of the image, they kind of block the view uh, for you to not look farther to the edge. They basically said, okay, from here, go back to the left, there's nothing of interest here. So it's kind of making you, if you were to come this way, you just look down towards the cows and back in, or either up and back in. That's kind of the idea. The fact also that this foreground, all the way to these cows and connecting to the tree, this whole shape is in darkness, is in shadow, and connects with all this, is doing the same. There's a sense of a natural frame here that connects with this. And then again, this whole cloud with the light that is not passing through makes another natural frame here on the left. All right, moving on to the next. So I'm about to analyze one of mine, right? It will be the only example of such things, but I wanted to use it because, well, you guys have been seeing it for quite a bit at this point in a few of the chapters. And it was actually a good example of mine where it pretty much followed the thirds quite naturally. I don't exactly remember if I was truly thinking I'm going to do it in the thirds and that's that. But in the end, it pretty much did came out that way. And because of that, there's an obvious sense that it works, right? So even if it's not exactly in the thirds, so yes, this characters is around the third, but the center is not necessarily at a specific point, right? You could say that maybe the face is the most important thing here, and yet the face is closer to the edge, but still the character is around the upper right third. The fact that also that it is up around the upper right one, it is important because this one will be the tallest character in the scene, and it is above the others because this one is the general, let's say, and these are the regular soldiers. So it has to feel that she is on top of them, both physically and symbolically speaking. And then the other one, even though it covers and it's big enough that it's going all the way to the upper third, it feels that there's this interaction of upper third, lower third, because she is taller in the context of the painting. If I remove the lines, you would think that this is a upper third, lower third, even though technically this one goes all the way up to the third, but the fact that she's offsetted enough, it makes this dynamic. Other than that, there's a few other things at hand. So we get these implied lines, just like the Bierstadt painting. So we have these foreground debris objects, right? So with these iron bars pointing inwards. So that's obviously by design. If I'm gonna have them, at least I'm gonna have them helping the view guide you inwards and not outwards. Um, Other than that, we have the big smoke column becomes a big graphic element of not much interest because it's so low contrast. But then the edge is quite well drawn and sharp enough that that one with the smaller one creates these two lines dynamically that frame the character. And that's again by design. Then there's the sun is just behind the character, so creates a bit more, an extra bit of interest around here and not necessarily here or here. These other two shoulders are there to compensate too. So this one is just a shoulder pad, but is there to frame and to point inwards, just like this. Also a sense of the fact that you are in between these two guys. So there's something about that POV here too happening. And then there's also all the soldiers seems to be looking forward to, we assume to her, because this one is looking backwards. So we can guess that all of them are looking at her. So that also brings attention. That's more of a, not so much a rule of composition, but it's more of a human thing. There's something about human faces that attracts our eye the most in the hierarchy of things. And so if we look at if we see faces looking at something, that attracts our attention very much. You can actually notice that, like if you're on the street and at some point you see someone looking at something, or it seems like that is looking at something, you may look at that, and if you notice around you, you guys may attract other people to look into that direction. That is more of a, well, just a human reaction, right? So in painting, we can use this